Good morning, my friends. So Sasori is one of my personal favorite characters of this show, and personally, I think one of the most underrated characters across all of anime. He's the first Akatsuki member whose abilities get completely fleshed out, and I think he is the perfect introduction to one of the best villain groups in all of anime. Before I explain everything you need to know about one of my favorite characters of the show, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Any love and support you can give this video means the world to me. With that being said, let's get into it. The first thing you need to know about Sasori is that he is the greatest puppet master in the history of the world. He was first shown how to work on puppets as well as the puppet master jutsu by Lady Chiyo, his grandmother, after his father and mother were killed by Sakamo Hatake, Kakashi's father, who later earned the title Sasori of the Red Sand during the Third Great Ninja War because his puppets dyed the sand red with his enemy's blood. It was during that time that he created the crow, the black ant, and the salamander, the three puppets that Kankuro used in his fight against Sasori. However, his desire to create the perfect puppet would eventually lead him to start studying human puppets, aka a puppet made out of a human corpse. He would sadly succeed in this morbid task, and in the anime, his first stated human puppet is his childhood friend who accidentally ingested some of his poison. However, in the manga, the third Kazekage puppet is actually the only human puppet shown. The big advantage to human puppets is that they were able to retain the abilities of the person that they were made out of, even Kekkei Genkai's. Sasori's studies into these morbid arts would eventually lead him to leave the Sand Village, however not before assassinating the third Kazekage and taking his body to be turned into a human puppet. Sometime after leaving the Sand Village in the anime, it's shown that Konan recruits Sasori by defeating him in combat with the wager that if she wins, he'll join the Akatsuki. However, in the manga, we're never actually shown how he joins the Akatsuki. Anyways, while a member of the Akatsuki, his first partner was Orochimaru, and these two would align in the fact that they were both trying to create perfect life and maybe immortality. But he was later switched to Deidara after Orochimaru left the Akatsuki. And in the anime, Sasori held such a grudge against Orochimaru that this is the reason he uses his brainwashing jutsu on Kabuto to try to use him as a spy against Orochimaru. The artistic duo of Deidara and Sasori would often argue about what was the greatest form of art, something that was only an instant and an explosion, or something that would last forever. And while partnered with Deidara, the pair would invade the Sand Village to try to retrieve the One-Tailed Jinchuriki, aka Gaara. Now, sometime in the past, Sasori had placed his brainwashing jutsu on a high-ranking sand ninja named Yura, so that when he and Deidara were invading, he just used the jutsu and his knowledge of the Sand Village to infiltrate with relatively no resistance. And after Deidara was able to defeat Gaara, the pair were able to exit the Sand Village relatively easily. The only problem came when Kankuro would follow the pair and challenge Sasori to a fight. Now, because Sasori literally created the puppets that Kankuro uses against him, he puts belt to ass and leaves Kankuro for dead after poisoning him. However, not before Kankuro was able to grab a piece of his clothing. This would end up being a fatal mistake for Sasori, not only because were they able to track the two of them based off the scent, Sakura was also able to develop an antidote by studying the poison that was in Kankuro. Had Sasori just killed Kankuro and taken the body, none of this would have happened. And this mistake would lead to him having one of the worst matchups in ninja history. Because the only way he was able to be defeated was because Lady Chiyo is the one who taught him the puppet master technique and is the only person in the world who could read his moves. On top of being up against one of only two medical ninjas in the entire world who could develop an antidote for his poison. And even with all of those odds stacked against him, Lady Chiyo states he should have been able to dodge her final attack, so he basically committed suicide. Sasori's main weapons were his army of puppets, which he states prior to his fight with Sakura and Chiyo to have a collection of 298. As well as the poison that he created himself, which makes every single attack a one-shot kill. This poison causes paralysis virtually immediately and will kill the opponents after a painful 3 days. His first line of defense is the Hiroko puppet, which is stated in the anime to be a human puppet made out of a strong shinobi with Sasori's personal modification. However, no indication like this is ever given in the manga, and it's just a normal puppet. The strongest and coolest modification that he gives to the Hiroko puppet is definitely the Iron Scorpion tail, which is an homage to Sasori's name, literally meaning scorpion. The tail is incredibly strong as well as large, so it can be used for blocking, as well as capable of high-speed striking, capable of poisoning the opponent. Hiroko puppet can also shoot thousands of poison senbons out of its mouth in the form of a cannon, as well as having a torpedo for a left arm that when shot, it'll shoot poison senbons in every direction like a massive grenade. On top of all of that, he's got a demon-faced shield on his back, which is said to be incredibly durable. To mention, the Hiroko puppet also provided a voice changer for Sasori. If you do ever manage to make it past the Hiroko puppet, Sasori will then switch to his favorite puppet, the third Kazekage human puppet. This puppet alone is Kage level. Puppet's right arm has a whole array of poison-dipped blades. Puppet's left arm has a summoning seal that creates more arms out of it, each arm having more summoning seals, creating a near endless amount of arms to crush the opponent with. Some of these arms also have weapons on them, such as poison gas or a hooking weapon. Left arm can then be detached after thousands of arms are summoned to maintain mobility. The most powerful ability of this puppet is the third Kazekage's Kekkei Genkai magnet release. The puppet produces iron sand from its mouth, all of which that's dipped in Sasori's poison. The iron sand can then be manipulated into any weapon that Sasori can think of. And even if you are able to make it through the Hiriko puppet as well as defeat the third Kazekage puppet, Sasori himself is one of the deadliest weapons. Sasori can shoot fire from his hands using the first scroll on his back, as well as in the anime, the ability to shoot water from his hands strong enough to cut rocks by using the fourth scroll on his back. We never get to see him use this ability in the manga and only get to see him use 2 of the 4 scrolls. He also has giant spinning propeller blades on his back for defense or cutting, a giant poison coil with a spear on the end that Sasori can shoot and retract at will. If you do somehow manage to destroy Sasori, his body can just be remade as long as his human core stays intact. The living core can also be passed between his puppets to prevent himself from being captured. And as if all of that wasn't enough to make him incredibly OP and incredibly underrated, he can summon an army of 100 puppets that he himself stated he used to destroy an entire nation. Here in an anime filler arc, we actually get to find out the nation that he destroyed, and it's called the Land of This, and it's a small nation bordering the Land of Fire. Sasori's first level of defense is at least Jonin level in the Hiriko puppet. He was Kage level and then added the strongest Kazekage in history as a weapon. He is the perfect example of how to do an OP villain. Every stage of the fight had me on the edge of my seat, wondering what his next ability or next weapon was gonna be. Full transparency, I am a little biased because even in part 1, I always found Kankuro's Puppet Master Jutsu to be extremely interesting. Getting to see an Akatsuki member with this level of aptitude for the jutsu was such a dream come true for me. The backstory is relatively simple, just like every other character it feels like in the show. He's an orphan who lost his parents in the war. However, it's human enough to make him feel fleshed out, as well as the puppets feeling creepy enough to make it feel unique. Even though he lost to an old lady and a chunin, I don't think you could have picked a worse matchup with any 2 ninjas that are below Kage level in the entire world. This is why Sasori is the most underrated member of the best villain group in all of anime and deserves more respect.